So this week, we will dance a bit more fully into the atonement, into what it is, and perhaps get a better sense of what it means when A Course in Miracles talks about the atonement.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuting myself, but I wasn't.
Oh, now I hear you, Paula.
I kept talking and I kept thinking, okay, I'm still mute.
That's all right. We're all here.
What I've been saying was I'm still as unclear about the atonement as I was last time.
Oh boy.
I had intended to check out the reference that was it Terry? I forget who that gave the reference to Ken Wapnick, and
yes.
I thought, oh, I need to go look that up because that really sounded, really clear to me then. But then I forgot to look it up, so I'm still.
All right.
I'm gonna need to do.
Quite all right. Yeah, I think that's our job today, is to figure out a bit more fully what the atonement is.
Yeah.
So, hello, Karen. Hello, Shabana. Bima.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. I'm sorry, Paula, were you about to say something? You were about to say, what the heck is the atonement?
Whatever it was, I forgot.
Okay. So
I just have to go eat something. That's why I'm on. I'll be right back.
That's fine. Take your time.
Thank you.
So, let me get the link to this one. We are just on the very next section. This one is called The Altar of God. And it gives us a very nice visual, or a nice way of thinking about things. At least I think it's nice. And before we start, I had been thinking about, I think it was a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we had a discussion about extension and projection. And Karen, you had asked if we're extending when we're projecting, something along those lines.
Right.
And I've been thinking about this, and I think what it comes down to, and tell me if this makes sense, when we're projecting, we're coming from a place of lack. So anytime we're coming from a true extension, a place of extension, we are kind of reaching out. I think of like arms extending out and touching, other little nodes of extension. I think, other people, in other words. And when we come from that place of lack, that's what projection is. In other words, we're just not extending. And because we're not extending, it seems like these other people are not getting any closer and we're not communicating with them. So we're projecting, we're saying, oh, they're the ones, it's because of them that we're not communicating. Because of them, we're not getting any closer and we're not reaching out to them. In other words, when we're coming from a place of lack, we're not extending, and we're projecting that, but we don't want to take blame. We don't want to take responsibility for it. So we're not extending, and we're saying, it must be that. That's the reason why we're not extending, and we're not in that creative space.
So I think I'm with you in what you're, pointing at, reaching for. I'd have to go back. I found my books.
Oh,
on my many bookshelves. Where are they? I'll have to go back, and I want to carve out some time to start at the beginning and read the book, like not just spend this hour like we talked about before. Anyway, I think there was something in the text that you read that week that said we're always extending, something to that effect. And that's why I put the question there, because I was more thinking what you just said, that when we're projecting, we're not extending. But by definition, I'll have to go back and see, was the text saying we're always extending? So that was a question.
I think the question was, I said that we are always extending.
Ah.
And I don't think the text says it. that was my interpretation of it. I don't think the text actually says that.
Okay,
I'll clarify.
you know me by now. I'll want to go read it, see what it actually said. I would like to just toss in here quickly that the last couple of days, I had this like slap in the face, but it was like a kiss slap. It was like a wake up thing. And it was, I've had this intense experience after experience after experience, and it's like still was going on just within the last hour, of things happening that I put the word disconnect to it. And I would come away from it and I think, well, that was a disconnect. That person's disconnected, or I'm disconnected from that person, disconnect, or that was a disconnected conversation, or that didn't make sense. There's a disconnect there. And I realized, oh, there's only one, what I'm calling disconnect, which is the same thing as error. Like there's only one, exactly. You know, and it was just like, boom, nice. Big fat kiss on the face, you know, like, great, good, analyze it to death if you feel like it, Karen, but you know what? It's all the same damn thing.
Yeah, only disconnect from source. That's the only
disconnect from source. So if you're not liking it, spend some more time in meditation.
Exactly.
If you don't care for what just happened an hour ago, well, that's a pretty strong signal that you're not spending enough time there in extension. Right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure what part of the text comes to it, but essentially it addresses exactly that. If we were in a state of you know, disarray, or our peace of mind seems to be not here, essentially the first thing is to acknowledge, I must have chosen wrongly, and then just from there say, okay, I'm willing to see things differently, whether it be the past or a present thing that's going on right now. But just that ties into this whole theme of the little willingness that just is such an incredibly powerful tool of a course.
Willingness.
Just a little, just the willingness to say, yeah, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I'm willing to say maybe I'm wrong. That's it. That's all it takes for the doors open, and then we can see, you know. But if we're clinging to it, if we're so steadfast in saying, no, this is right, and I'll prove to you that this is right, you know, and this is why I'm miserable, and I'll tell you why, and this, and there's no willingness there. But if you're saying, well, maybe there's another way. That's all.
I love that. And not only is it not willingness, or it's unwillingness, it's also that treasure we spoke about last week, that hanging on for dear life to that belief that, well, I just spent an hour listening to you. You made me feel all that. Well, that's a treasure, holding on to that.
Exactly.
And we will, what did it say? Defend our treasures. I love that last week. Yeah. I was like, man, that is true.
Yeah. It's like I was at a bus stop yesterday, and everyone was, the bus driver was saying, oh, I paid everyone who gets on here and they never have enough money. And like, I could have said, you know, well, I mean, maybe they're just great people too. But I just know that when someone's coming from that they're going to say, that's not true, and I'll tell you why that's not true. So it almost you get rooted even further in that belief, you know?
Yeah.
No, this is right. I am in a bad space, and I'll prove to you why. And you list all the reasons, you know. But
it was really funny. What just happened on the phone is this person who I love dearly was going through something and kept putting things to me in the form of a question. Well, what would you do, or what do you think? Like, over and over again. And then every now and then I would interject, and whatever I was saying was completely discounted. And I had this feeling, my treasure, my feeling was, well, what I have to say is important. And anyway, you just asked me, right? And I was holding on to that. Well, why aren't you listening to my answer? And I realized that's just yet another treasure. Who cares? She can ask me. She doesn't have to want my answer. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's so great. I'm so excited about the revealing of all those treasures.
Nice.
Like, oh, there's another one. Oh, really? There? Oh,
yeah. Treasure, yeah.
Treasure, defend.
Plastic. The treasure box is full of plastic coins, essentially.
Mm. They don't work in the bus thing.
Yeah. Exactly. One more thing on that note is essentially, I think it's maybe in chapter 3 or so. It says commitment to another cannot set us back. It only leads to mutual progress. So, I mean, this is in biblical terms. You know, Jesus said, "Go if somebody asks you to go a mile, go the extra mile." In other words, if somebody's asking you to do something which is perceived as ridiculous, to just do it, because clearly they think that their salvation, and this is putting it strongly, their salvation rests in this being done. Now, if we make the claim that it's ridiculous and say, no, I'm not going to do that, then we're saying that our salvation rests in not doing it. So we've made it ridiculous. But it doesn't matter regardless. Like, we don't have to do anything in this existence.
We don't.
Asking us to do something, then if we're in spirit and we can, then why not? Even if it is, you know, seemingly ridiculous.
Yeah. Even if it is working on a Sunday.
Sometimes you got to say it's a Sunday.
Sometimes.
Hello, Terry.
Hi.
You made it. And we have Jane here too.
Yeah, I have a bad cold.
Oh.
So I may stop coughing. I'll try not to cough.
That's okay. So
I was just thinking when you were talking about treasure, Jesus talks about building up your treasures in heaven.
Yeah.
This is what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, that's the real treasure. All this, you know, all these things, you know, it's just, it puts it such a matter of factly that this is just dust. It's just dust that's assembled in a particular way.
Yeah.
And it's just true. This is just all these things that maybe people would label as treasures, the bottle. It's just dust that's formed in a particular way, and it will return to being actual dust in the blink.
Literally, scientifically, dust.
Exactly. Everything, body, you know, which just shows that that's not treasure. That's not who we are. And associating with it or identifying with it or pinning our you know, our peace of mind on these things inevitably leads to, you know, we're selling ourselves short. Absolutely. The treasure is eternal.
There's nothing woo-woo about that either, because, you know, I'm sitting on a chair, it's leather, it came from an animal, sorry, and you know, it's got some metal things in it too. So this is all from the earth, and that all is just, you know, from the earth, not anything that I need to hang on to. But those treasures that Karen's talking about, you know, that she's finding, I believe those are the treasures that we're building up in heaven.
Absolutely. Well, the real treasures are extending. They're what's actually creating. All this stuff that we hold is just reassembled, reconfigured things that already exist. We're taking matter and shaping it. We're not creating anything. We're just making something new. But the treasures we're creating, bringing into existence these ideas and these, you know, this love that's shared. That's that. Yeah.
And what you said earlier, Tim, about the willingness, you know, about just being willing to, you know, maybe admit that you could be wrong about something, or willing to admit that there's another way of seeing whatever the situation is. What I feel is that a lot of times it comes down to our own just ability to be aware, just that awareness, because it's not because I think it's not so much that you're unwilling to you know, accept those things, but you're not aware of the choices you're making. You know, it's like you're not really in the moment, you know, if whatever you know, annoyance or anger or whatever you feel, it's something that you react to, and you're not really stopping to think. And so it's, and stopping to really be aware of the choices that you're making. And I think that's probably, for me, it seems like, you know, I'm not in the habit of pausing and being aware of those choices.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's really what A Course in Miracles is designed to do, is to force us to be aware of these subconscious beliefs that we hold just about everything.
Right.
And to question those annoyances and say, well, what is triggering this? Why am I getting annoyed at this? And what is the value of this? What is this for? And because, I mean, like you said, it's a reaction. I think most people, most of us are on just a reaction. We're not thinking, having a conscious, you know, thought as to what our fundamental beliefs are, who we think we are, who we think everybody else is, what we think reality is. We've just had something given to us, and we just never question it. And from there, all these reactions happen, and we can't blame the person, because it's just a product of this whole, you know, this world that we live in, this society. But really, the solution, like you said, is to actually think about these. And anytime, really either way, anytime we lose our peace of mind, to think about what is causing this, and is it worth it? One of my favorite lines from A Course in Miracles is, would you rather be right or happy?
Exactly.
Because it's really is often between the two. Do you really want to be right, whatever that means, or do you want to be happy? And a lot of times it's between those two things. And
Yesterday I had a doubled up annoyance. It was really quite hysterical. I was sharing a work situation. I was just sharing. I was actually taking delight in the situation, the busyness, the, you know, workload, things like that. And I was sharing it, and the person's reaction was he was annoyed on my behalf, which I thought was really interesting, because I recognized, because his comment was like to that point, and I recognized right away that I wasn't feeling annoyed about it. It was interesting to me that he was expressing annoyance for my sake, and then I got annoyed at him for doing that.
you shared it.
Right?
You shared it. You made it wrong.
Jumped right into it. Got ooh, that energy stream. Boom. I was right in it. That was strange.
I'd like to ask for some clarification or input on this. A few years ago, I was involved in a dispute with someone in my building here, and I got a professional to come in and help us. And two of the people on the committee sitting in my living room here said, of course, we would be really happy to pay you a consulting fee. So when the fellow left, I said, oh, that was unusual, because we don't usually pay consulting fees, and I think you understood this would be pro bono. So this guy then, the consultant, sent his bill to the two people on the committee, and they said, we did not agree to this. And so the guy started litigation and wanted me to be a witness to say, yeah, well, I definitely heard that they were going to, you know, offer you a small stipend for doing this. So my dilemma is, do I
Forgive.
Oh yeah, I forgive for sure. But do I then say
Well, I don't think it's necessary for you to hide the truth.
well, that's my problem. I didn't want to lie and say, no, they didn't say that, when I knew that they did.
Right. Well, I mean, you certainly say what. There's no sense in hiding the truth. But another awesome visual or phrasing of A Course in Miracles is essentially, if you're if we are ever to be put on trial by the high court, capital H, high court,
Mhm.
the high court will dismiss the case.
Mhm.
There's no guilt. The verdict is thine is the kingdom. That's the eternal verdict.
Oh, nice.
So I mean, no matter what I think anybody has done to seek some sort of punishment, that's not in accordance with reality. That's not in accordance with God, certainly. But that's not. But I mean, if you you don't have to lie to make that true.
Well, there's been silence from their side for several years. They just
Mm.
and their children have been told not to talk to me. And
Wow.
I said to the guy who was litigating, I said, look, I am not going to trial with this. I'm not going to appear as a witness. I have to live with these people. And I said, I think you should just drop it.
Mm.
So anyway, I didn't want to lie. I mean, I guess if I said, oh, I really didn't hear that, you know, they might have felt better. But a person told me that it was, they knew these two, and that they had a bit of a vendetta going with the owners, who are very wealthy people. And they were part of this litigation. And this was just, they were taking it out on me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like the scapegoat.
Projection, the source of their projection.
And I understand.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm.
But I will say that to never underestimate the power of forgiveness in this, because even just forgiving, by completely forgiving them and really yourself about this, any misperceptions about this you may have, or any sort of grasping, clinging to this, to self-forgiveness, that I wouldn't put past the power of forgiveness in this, and just see if just that self-work, what that results in externally with you. I mean, like Karen was sharing, how just being in this state of mind, how people in her life started contacting her from a loving place out of nowhere. And it's like, because clearly there's two people, but they're not separated. They're connected by this field of thought and love, and it takes two to make it a conflict.
Yeah. So I basically just been in avoidance, just avoiding it. Just, I'm not going to talk about it. So
Maybe it could be an active healing process,
mm-hmm.
rather than a this.
Mm-hmm.
Actively sending them love, or I'm not sure what this.
No, that's good. One thing that I'm thinking about is the Ho'oponopono prayer.
Yeah.
Sending that to them.
That is a great technique.
Mm-hmm.
It did shut down a whole psychiatric facility, as I'm told.
Yes,
So,
I know. It's amazing.
So, I would like to get into this section 3 of chapter 2. Let me type this in the chat. Okay.
And by the way, he never met even one of those. I mean, he never even sat with any of those people.
Just saw their pictures, right? Yeah.
Oh, and the psychiatric unit. Yeah. It's amazing.
He made his job unnecessary. It's a real teacher. So we are progressing with the atonement this week. We're on section 3 of chapter 2. It's called the altar of God. Okay. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. Since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement and thus maintain the separation. This is generally seen as a need to protect the body. The many body fantasies in which minds engage arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining, quote, atonement. Perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion, because it alters only part of it. It does recognize that atonement in physical terms is impossible. The next step, however, is to realize that a temple is not a structure at all. Its true holiness lies at the inner altar around which the structure is built. The emphasis on beautiful structures is a sign of the fear of atonement and an unwillingness to reach the altar itself. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. Spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. For perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of mind. Before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear are miscreations that must be undone for the restoration of the temple and for the opening of the altar to receive the atonement. This heals the separation by placing within you the one effective defense against all separation thoughts and making you perfectly invulnerable. The acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. This may appear to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision, but this is not so. You can temporize and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your Creator, who set the limits on your ability to miscreate. An imprisoned will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the two levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute, but the outcome is as certain as God. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All solutions the physical eyes seeks dissolve. Spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into its service. This reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. The children of God are entitled to the perfect comfort that comes from perfect trust. Until they achieve this, they waste themselves and their true creative powers on useless attempts to make themselves more comfortable by inappropriate means. But the real means are already provided and do not involve any effort at all on their part. The atonement is the only gift that is worthy of being offered at the altar of God because of the value of the altar itself. It was created perfect and is entirely worthy of receiving perfection. God and his creations are completely dependent on each other. He depends on them because he created them perfect. He gave them his peace so they could not be shaken and could not be deceived. Whenever you are afraid, you are deceived, and your mind cannot serve the Holy Spirit. This starves you by denying you your daily bread. God is lonely without her sons, and they are lonely without her. They must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. They must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. The atonement is the guarantee that they will ultimately succeed. So there's some cool things in this section. The first of which is essentially bringing up this point of perceiving the body as a temple. And this goes on to say that that's only the first step. But the next step is to recognize that a temple the holiness of a temple lies not in the structure at all. Our body is the structure of the temple, but that's not where the temple is. The holiness of the temple is the inner altar. And the inner altar has nothing to do with the physical makeup of the temple. I think we've all been to, or many of us have been to, you know, these grand cathedrals, grand palaces, and they're meant to be a holy place, and you walk in and it feels like a tourist destination. There's no holiness about it. But some of us have been fortunate enough to be in a perhaps a rundown building. Maybe it's a church, maybe it's just a room somewhere that just carries a holiness about it, a sacred. You could just go in and you could feel it, not with our sense of touch, but we feel it, we intuit the holiness. And that's what A Course in Miracles calls the spiritual eye, to perceive this holiness, have spiritual clarity, where it has nothing to do with what it looks like visually or what it smells like, but we can just feel that presence. And it's just as it is with an actual church or a temple, it is with us. So our holiness lies not in our temple. Our bodies are temple, but the holiness comes from the inner altar. I guess we could think of it as mind or spirit. Another cool thought from this section is the acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. And this may appear to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision. And I was thinking that this is kind of similar to the idea of all drops of water will inevitably return to the ocean. So the water in a coffee cup will return to the ocean, inevitably. The snowflake on the top of Mount Everest will return to the ocean, inevitably. It's guaranteed. And just as we can think that we can separate from God, but that's all that we can do. We can think that it's true. We can believe it. We cannot separate from God. It's inevitable that we return, and this whole process of every part of this existence, every part of the sonship, joining, everyone, the sonship becoming one truly. When that's complete, that's the atonement. That's the final slice of time, if you will. That's where time is at an end. That's where the atonement is complete. So that is guaranteed.
Becoming one or recognizing that it's one.
Is there a difference? Are we, well, in reality, we are one. So I don't think we have to become anything that we're not already. That realization, I think, is closer. And that realization by every component of the sonship, you know, which seems to be separate, maybe a full self-realization of one.
Yeah.
And once that's complete, that's the time's end, that's the atonement. That is the final slice of time, that's the atonement. And with that, so in order to get there, that's why atonement, in my understanding of it, is essentially interchangeable with forgiveness, because the only way we hold on to separation is if we think it serves us. The only time it would serve us is if we want something outside of ourselves that we don't want within, that we say we want to keep that outside of ourselves. And that calls for forgiveness, because we're judging, we're condemning a part of ourselves, and we're pushing it outside of ourselves. So really, when we forgive ourselves, that misperception, maybe we could forgive this, whatever this is. If we think it needs forgiveness, a start would be to forgive that. That would be a start. But really, we're the ones that's putting this, is forgiving this, and then we see it fresh. When all of the sonship forgives all of itself, that's truly forgives. In other words, each moment is completely removed from the past. The past has no bearing on this present moment here. the past. I'm not taking any baggage from the past into here and any of my interactions. Everything is fresh. Everybody that we see is a brand new encounter. That's forgiving the past, not holding on to any judgments or, oh, this person did that before. So, you know, that's the real forgiveness, and forgiving ourselves for that misperception. That's true forgiveness.
It's like psychological amnesia.
Essentially.
The psychology of me is created from everything in the past. Every thought I've had about everything in the past. That's how I view the psychology of me. But with amnesia of that, it's just more this temple extending.
Perhaps it's a selective amnesia where essentially every loving thought that every son of God, that every daughter of God has had is true. So we can retain that. That's true. That's a part of our extension.
Right.
But
Or,
looking through error.
right. And when Karen said the psychology of me, I think too, you could think of it as, letting go of the me, not, that,
Right.
this psychology of letting go of that psychology of me.
Right. That personal identity.
Ego, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ego thought. Absolutely. Ego, yeah. Every separating thought. Where does it say? Essentially every thought of
That was very helpful, what you were discussing earlier too, because at least for me, because I was still having trouble, understanding, getting a better understanding of the atonement. But that made sense, what your discussion.
And so I mean, throughout the text, it'll say, essentially dozens of times throughout the text, it'll say the atonement is ba 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 ba, and then a chapter later, the atonement is ba ba ba. So there are many ways to say it and what it is and what it represents, because
Right.
it's really beyond words. But I think it throughout, it just continuously, hammers it in our head of, this is what the atonement is. It's pure forgiveness. It's only looking beyond through error, not seeing only the love in our brothers and sisters. And so it's all of these things.
That was part of my problem, is all of the different ways that it describes the atonement, but doesn't really say what it is. And
Correct.
in my mind, before all of this, I had understood the atonement as, almost like repentance, right? That, when you think of like the Day of Atonement, it's like you think it means it, or at least that was my, previous understanding of it, that it was kind of related to repentance and forgiveness, but I wasn't thinking of it as, strictly that point of that final forgiveness where we forgive everyone and ourselves. And it's that, final point of overcoming the separation through forgiveness.
Yes. And I think it does, atonement and forgiveness. I think atonement maybe can be seen as the ultimate forgiveness. It's the final forgiveness, whereas forgiveness maybe is like a piece of atonement, but
Right.
atonement is the final forgiveness. And I mean, maybe this will help. The next section starts with the sentence: the miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. So in other words, atonement is this principle that's guiding us.
Right.
One sentiment that's reiterated countlessly through this, is the sole purpose of the miracle worker, the sole purpose of God's teacher, the sole purpose of the Son of God, the daughter of God, is to accept the atonement for himself, to accept the atonement for herself. That's the sole purpose of the miracle worker, the sole purpose of the Son of God, the daughter of God, sole purpose of God's teacher is to accept the atonement for himself, accept the atonement for herself. And so when we're told all these things about the atonement, and this is what the atonement is, the atonement cannot see error, it looks through it, it's forgiveness. How do we accept that for ourselves, if not by self-forgiveness? How do we accept the atonement, this process of forgiving, of everybody realizing forgiveness and unity? How do we accept that, which seems like a collective joint venture? How do we accept that for ourselves? And so I take that to mean, so it seems to mean that I can't force anybody to forgive anybody else, but I can forgive myself. And I cannot forgive anybody else, because that means that somebody else did something to me. And that would be, in other words, in paragraph 4, so spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. So what this is saying is another, I'm not sure if it's in this passage or somewhere else. It doesn't look at error and then from there forgive it. It doesn't say, this is wrong and therefore I forgive it. No, it looks through it. It looks through right to solution. When we look at error, we're making it real. So now this is the illusion of forgiveness. You know, there's the illusion of love and all this stuff. The illusion of forgiveness is saying, oh, that person did that to me, but I forgive them. That's not forgiveness. That's the illusion of forgiveness. That's ego saying, you know what, I'm morally superior to this person because even though they did this wrong to me, I forgive them. So therefore, I'm superior. No, forgiveness doesn't even recognize it as error. It sees through it. It sees through to the solution, which is our unity, our cohesion.
Right.
So is forgiving ourselves then just recognizing that there was no error?
Essentially, yes.
I mean, if not that, then what is that process of forgiving self, right?
I like to think of it as forgiving ourselves, our misperceptions that we hold.
Yeah.
If we're somebody is ticking us off, really we are the ones that are choosing to experience that. And when we project it onto some individual or some event, once we recognize that the situation needs remedy, that's the first step, recognizing that, okay, we must have decided wrongly somewhere. The atonement is the solution. It's always the solution. So what needs atoning? We don't forgive the person. We don't say, you know what, you did this thing to me, but it's okay. We say, I must be perceiving this incorrectly. But I'm not gonna beat myself up for it. I'm not going to continue to be in this funk. I forgive myself. I forgive myself all my misperceptions of the past. And
I like that. Forgiving the misperceptions. Yeah.
And therefore I give this, whatever I held on to, Holy Spirit, infinite intelligence, spirit, divine, I forgive myself. And I think it's important to really recognize the greater within us, the Holy Spirit or divine, I forgive myself all my misperceptions of the past. And then that's what it is. That's how it's turning it over, giving it up. A Course in Miracles says, give it to the Holy Spirit, and then it's taken. It's gone. We don't need to hold it anymore.
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Excellent. So this is something I think aligned with what you were talking about, Karen, is at the end of paragraph 4, the last sentence, as a result, the mind becomes increasingly, so as a result of essentially heightening consciousness or embracing truth, maybe fully, as a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. And this is kind of like spiritual daggers. Some people become so numb and calloused to essentially choosing from a misaligned perspective, choosing illusion, that choosing illusion is just normal. And it's like walking on coals and it's just normal. Whereas when we're on this path of spiritual clarity, hello, Kathy. Nice for you to join us. We're on this path of spiritual clarity, and it's this lush ground, and we're walking on the grass in our bare feet, and there's dew. And if something sways our attention, we say, oh, let me walk this way, and we step on a pin. Whoa, hold on. We know immediately that there's something wrong with it, and it's a correction. It's an auto-corrective device. Whereas previously, we were wearing these boots, and we were stepping on all sorts of glass, and it was just normal. But once we have reestablished the power of the mind, it becomes increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. And so these things, these seemingly minor choices or decisions or events, which previously would have just been normal or have just been flown through the radar, really hit a point and cause us to, sit back in our seats and wonder what it is that we're doing, or why this simple thing made us lose our peace of mind. But in reality, the first principle of miracles, there is no order of difficulty in miracles. One is not harder than any other. One is not bigger. They're all the same. So every moment, there's no more important moments. Every moment is the equal magnitude. Each moment, which is now, eternally, is equal. There's equal importance on now, as always. All decisions, we're either in spirit or we're misaligned, or we're in illusion. Or in illusion, it could take many forms, but spirit or illusion. And when we're off that path, for one moment, even though that seems minor, it's a choice to not be on spirit. So it's when we're in that sensitive part, one moment in illusion is like a stepping on daggers, and we get kicked back into this, like, reality. So that is, I guess, one of the benefits and one of the warnings of being on a path of truth is that straying away from it will put some daggers in the foot, in the mind, I should say. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
So I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are about the inevitability of our outcome. Essentially, the acceptance of the atonements by everyone is only a matter of time, which seems to contradict free will. But we're told this is not so. And we can temporize, and we're capable of procrastination, but inevitably we will all accept the atonement. Does that make anybody feel uneasy about free will, or does that make anything seem strange? How there's this definite outcome that we're all headed towards. So where's our free will along the way? What choice do we have in along the way if we all are guaranteed to be at a final point?
I guess just in the delay. Yeah. We can delay it as long as we like. I mean, we're talking about the construct of time here.
Right, right. That's what I was thinking, is that, well, you know, we all have our own ideas of, or the restrictions of our perceptions of what time is, but that is, yeah, something that in the end will seem like, you know, a snap of a finger millions of years from now.
But that's the funny thing, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if I can articulate what I feel, but millions of years from now is just now.
Right.
So that's why I said construct of time, right? So the end, again, it's language, right? The end. Well, that's just when we get to, you know, every word, it just feels wrong right now. I can't even quite say it. In other words, the atonement is now, but in this constructed perceptual world we've created, not projecting world, I mean, this world of projection, we're not aware of it. We're not living it. We're not realizing it.
Well, you just told me you were.
Well, right? I am.
But yeah, we are. We are. And the second to last sentence of this whole thing: we must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. So we do have this realization and this understanding, but there are parts of us that don't. Yeah. So just reaffirm that whenever there's love, and then there's a call for love, and responding to a call for love with that knowing point.
There are those little treasured beliefs, not the truth, but the other ones. And then when those are dissolved, then you're back in living the atonement, I guess, so I would say it. And then something else comes up, and then, oh yeah, well, I believe that. And then you're not living it. I mean, you are and you aren't, both. How could you not be? Yeah, how could you ever not be?
Well, this is where the levels come in.
Right.
And the level of reality, we are. Yeah. So I think there's level in mind. Are we in mind?
Right. I mean, that's, you know, I love to talk about those things, but it's not really to the point right this second.
Well, here's the thing: is I love A Course in Miracles because it's seemingly so complicated, but once it's kind of understood, it's very, very simple. It's very simple. It's like it's either truth or it's illusion, and that's all it is. It's really all it is, and that's why the preface or the introduction really says it all. And understanding that there's truth and then there's illusion, and illusion doesn't exist. And that's all A Course in Miracles says. And it's just funny how you know, intellectual perhaps we've made this existence, or complicated, but we need to see it through that lens to understand this truth. It's incredibly simple truth that there's reality and then there's illusion, and then this physical world, which is we're just making things, but then there's creation in the spirit, and it's just very you know, and then nobody can do anything to us. We're a product of our own mental construct. It's very, very simple, very empowering.
Sharon, I don't know if I'm here.
Kathy, yes.
Oh, cool. First of all, I apologize for being so late, and I had intended to be with you from the beginning of this program, and life just hasn't allowed that. So thank you. And I am coming in late today as well, but what I would share is just that I feel like we have the knowing initially, but because this world reinforces the mind and the thinking, you can be in it and know it and feel it, and you're there, you got it, and then quickly you're pulled out of it. And it's trusting that it really is back to the simple, and that it that all that we're living is an illusion, but there's just so much reinforcing it that it's like swimming upstream. You know it, but it's like you don't have all that support around you to keep you on that path. You keep getting thrown down in one way to surrender again and again and again. But it's the undoing. And that's why I love what you're doing, is because we need more of being with others that are on the path, because I think it really, we can't do it alone. It's, there's so much that wants to throw us off that you need to keep reinforcing and spending more time in this known space.
Absolutely.
And for me, I've spent so much on the outside watching, knowing something was off, but to be accepted and loved and all, as we all know, the basic stuff, we gave it up. But really down deep inside, we're just confirming something I believe we were born knowing.
Absolutely. We knew it before we were born.
Absolutely. It's home. It's but so much time spent out of it, or at least what feels like so much time spent out of it, that you can get so impatient because how quickly you can get tripped up because of all the crazy and chaos that goes on, that seems to be going on all around us.
So I would definitely be careful, Kathy, as to what you believe is support, because my understanding is it seems like you think there's a lot of support for the world of illusion, but I can't think of a greater support than God, which is support of reality, and that feeling that we get, and I guarantee, I'm fairly certain that when you'd said you're on path and everything's great, and then something kicks us off,
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you that you're in a state of lack of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now that's your support. That's Holy Spirit saying, wait, don't go there.
Right.
Direct communication from Holy Spirit saying, don't fall for the trap.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because that's the line you read just a few minutes ago. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. So what I was thinking when you were speaking, Kathy, is that the fact that you know, or you articulate it as, kind of being thrown off,
Mm-hmm.
That's your sensitivity to those things. If you weren't speaking that, then you wouldn't even be on the path, right?
Right.
It's so apparent that you are, and so you have sensitivity to those things.
Mm-hmm.
That
I think the part for me was always not leaving anyone behind. So it's the trust factor of like falling back and know you're going to be caught. And because you're aware of others that are in your life that are really deep in the illusion. And so I think that it's just that it's like a little thread that you're there, and yet it's that little tug, and it's breaking that final thread, I guess. Or
What is this thread, Kathy? What do you envision it holding?
Losing loved ones. I mean, I've done so much work where others still, I can just see them in the thick of it. And now we'd say, okay, that's all illusion. So if just me, if it's me by doing it for me, then as it says, then we all come along, right? I need to do it for me. And if we are all one, then I'm doing it with the whole.
Yeah.
That it's that, to stay in that and believe it. And that's where I want to be, but I don't. It's watching the others, I guess, or what have you. It's.
Are you speaking to people falling away, falling out of your life?
People that are very dear in my life that are really deep painful struggles and denial, I guess I would say. Fear, so much fear, and just, yeah.
Is that the cord, that your cord is connected to them in a way that you want to cut that? Is that what
am I okay to cut that?
Uh-huh.
So Kathy, maybe what would help is A Course in Miracles, it's the version of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And in other words, essentially, it's not necessary for you to empathize with pain. In fact, you must not. It's for all of our sakes,
Mm-hmm.
crucial that we don't make something real.
Right. I hear you.
A sickness or something, a struggle. When we empathize with that, we're sharing it, and we're bringing it into existence. If somebody
we're confirming it, right? Yeah. I hear you. Right.
So it's crucial that we don't empathize with pain or struggle. Rather, we empathize, we share in healing. So when we see somebody who is, caught in illusion or going through painful things, not to see them as a person in pain or a person choosing illusion, but to see them for the child of God that they are, to see them to their full potential. We don't allow ourselves to belittle them through our mind. We confirm their greatest existence, their greatest notion about themselves through our perspective. That's all we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So being on this path, we have this choice to see everybody as the perfection that they are, not their physical embodiments or their circumstance, because that's just a result of decisions, but to see them as the child of God, the divine essence, the pure potential that they have, the healing that they can accomplish, that they can give to us, to see that everywhere about us.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, so I think I always confused it because I don't give up on people, and I continually forgive, and saying that I'm confirming that there's something to forgive. But it's like people judge me because I don't give up, and I believe it's like understanding and hearing exactly what you're saying. And yet thinking that my way was, in a way, trying to guide them along the way, and I can't do that. I can only do it for me, and understanding that I can't, lead them. I can only do by doing for me. I'm helping them and letting go of all the rest. and it's that path.
And if we were to implement what Tim was saying about seeing others as child of God and focusing on that, then there's no need to cut any cord.
Yeah, I think that was where I get confused, I guess, is because I see the heart in everyone. And so when I'm in this body and observing the painful things that they're in or doing to themselves, it's like my heart does ache. And I guess that is the confirming.
Your physical heart, Kathy.
Yeah, right.
What you just said, you said when I'm in this body and I see this pain, entirely worldly thoughts, being bound by the body and seeing pain of other bodies.
Right.
Now, rather, this is the flip side. Seeing through this body, when I can see through this body, the perfection of my brother in their body, whatever form that they take. So there's a difference. It's rather than being a body and being the mind, the spirit controlling it, looking out at other spirits controlling their bodies. The subtle difference, but it makes all the world, because then all of a sudden pain is not part of the picture, or suffering, or even illusion.
You may not have been here, Kathy, or maybe you were, but I'll read this for my sake. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. So when we look with spiritual vision, we don't even see anything wrong with what anybody's doing. You can't see the error. You just see the love, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we see error? You know, like from our, are we really going to say that we're able to judge what error is from our perspective? We have this one pinhole perspective on this grand existence, and we're going to judge something as an error? That is the error. That's the only error, is to think that we can make that judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So-
I'm the one that I judge, so I blame me for all the stuff.
no,
I'm talking to my children and
This is
some.
the atonement. This is
Yeah.
important, Kathy.
Yeah. I embrace it. I appreciate your words.
But don't hold on to that blame for yourself. You must forgive yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then it's all gone. All gone. Nothing to hold on to. It's a mistake to be corrected. Right?
Mm-hmm. No, I welcome your words, and like I said, it can be there. It's like I'm lined up, and then a phone call of something horrific can just go hurt. But it's like I'm still picking up the books, and I keep doing the work, and
Okay. I have one more question for you, Kathy.
go for it.
Do you want that to be true?
Oh, of course I do.
What do you want to be true?
I want to
You want
I want to allow myself to let go of any ounce of resistance to live what we're talking about right now. I want to believe that I can, and I'm okay to do that, even though whatever goes on around me.
So, okay, please repeat this, Kathy. I let go of all resistance.
I let go of all resistance.
All resistance holding me back from the truth.
All resistance holding me back from the truth.
I let it go. There's no process, there's no wanting. Kathy, you let it go now. That's a choice.
Okay, I let it go.
You let it go, right?
Got it.
Resistance is but a choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I hear it, and I understand that too. I've learned it. You know, resistance is what spirals me into the depression. I got it. So I let it go.
Do you want to spiral into a depression, Kathy?
No, I don't.
No, so no mention of that.
Gotcha.
Resistance. I let go of my resistance. There's no but. There's no that's what does this. No, I let go of all resistance. Everything is clear. Truth is clear to me.
All resistance.
Yes.
Truth is clear.
Yes.
Hmm.
Is it not? God wants to be known. God doesn't make it, there's no puzzle. God makes it very obvious. So there's no process. We just let go of the resistance, and that's just a little willingness that we talked about earlier. Just a little willingness of saying, you know, I let go of that resistance. I let it go. That's a choice. Everything is clear to me. Watch it unfold.
This is a fresh start.
Yes.
I love it.
I feel it.
I feel it too.
Mm.
And so
Wow.
you came just in time, Kathy. You said you came.
I did. I almost didn't come because I said, oh, I'm coming late. I don't want to do that. But I was coming.
Just in time.
Just in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Healing is a joint effort. We cannot heal ourselves. We can receive healing by giving healing. So thank you, Kathy, for healing all of us today.
Wow.
And I would, before we bring this to an end, I would actually like to share, Karen, you shared a so-called spiritual pinprick of the minor discomfort, which you have become increasingly sensitive to. I must share that one that I had this past Friday. We had or it was Thursday. We had a meeting with humanities team, and I chose to read a passage from A Course in Miracles in the intro, and I chose to read one at the end. And I just felt very strongly that there was not time and place to do that. And I felt that disconnect, like you were talking about, Karen, a disconnect. And even my connection on Zoom was spotty as a manifestation of it. And
That's right, it was.
I was shaken for like a good amount of time. I was like, oh boy, I really had a disconnect there. And so, I mean, I guess right now I say, it's all okay. We're all okay. I let it go here.
Yeah.
Into the void, into the Holy Spirit to take it away.
So the disconnect really was your judgment that there was a disconnect, right?
I guess so.
The ultimate disconnect was
There's only one.
There's only one. Yeah. I enjoyed that, by the way.
I know.
Just saying.
I know. And
that was last week.
Was last week. I think short segment at the beginning is best from now on. But I will say that I'm glad you're interested in pursuing further, because really this is, at the end of the day, this is a course in miracles. And I trust that these discussions help to get some of these concepts in our, into our awareness. But really taking this seriously, if we were to really indulge ourselves, embark on this journey, A Course in Miracles, it requires our own study. And there's no one, we come here and we discuss what this group needs to discuss, but each individual here may require something else. So there's no set way of studying A Course in Miracles. But whatever we're drawn to do really has a big impact on the way we see things. And it doesn't take much, just a reading each day, just that little willingness of wanting to learn or really unlearn. A Course in Miracles is a process of unlearning the schools of thought that have led us into a very illusory way of seeing things. So I like to think of reading A Course in Miracles is our way of giving that little willingness to saying, I'm willing to see things in a new way. That's what learning is, or unlearning is. By definition, when we learn something, we're saying, I don't know everything, so I'm willing to learn something new. This is something that I don't know, I'm willing to learn it, or I'm willing to unlearn my previous schools of thought. So I think that's the most important thing of digging into A Course in Miracles, because it requires that. It's a text that requires focus and study. But when we devote that time, we're giving that little willingness, even if it's for just 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, we're giving that willingness to Spirit. And it is guaranteed that, just like meditation, it's a process that rewards us in ways that are not often immediately apparent. So that's my plug for reading A Course in Miracles this week. And I assume we'll pick up next week with probably the next section, because it's starting to get into the juicy stuff. But I thank everybody for joining us here today. Does anybody have any comments or anything that you'd like to share?
I will share. I am extremely grateful. I have my second book because the first one fell apart.
Oh, good.
And so it is a work in progress. But I this was something I've always done it on my own. And I believe that being together with others is a huge gift. It's something I've wanted and I just hadn't had it. So I am grateful for this. So thank you.
Thank you, as am I. I'm grateful you showed up right on time, Kathy.
You guys are great. Thank you.
Yes. So be sure to come back next week if you can. I'll send out a reminder. It'll probably be the next section. But if you are so inclined, venture into, open a book to the random page, or start taking the workbook lessons. Because really it is one cohesive document, and everything, understanding any one small part of it leads to understanding every other part of it. So any broader perspective certainly would help every other part of this. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Terry, Paula, Bima, Shabana, Kathy, and Jane.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We are beautiful here, and we're all grateful for our presence and our learning today and our healing.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank everybody here, and God bless.
See you next week.